Everyone, welcome to the F6P NFL DFS Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Keith Flemming. Joe, the brain Matz, as always, joining me, my brother in crime in DFS. Joe, I was really realizing last week, I had a very good financial week that
you did.
If that would have been, say, 50 times that amount, no one probably would have ever heard from me again. Like, I would still talk to you, but the show would be over. I'd just be like dust in the wind.
Just on an extended vacation.
They'd be like, where's Keith? He's probably in
retired.
Vegas. Yeah, he's in Vegas. That would be retirement for me, playing poker.
Professional gambler now. Yeah, that's what he does.
Oh my God, what a life. But I hope that the people that listen to this show had as good of a week as we did. Our picks last week, we've had some good weeks, but I think last week took the cake. I mean, even like just the QB position was a perfect indicator of it. We had the Fields play, obviously, was a smasher. Baker Mayfield play worked out. My Desmond Ridder play went off. You had Debo. I had Drake London. You had Najee. I mean, the list went on and on and on. So we're going to try to follow that up. But real quickly, before we get into this week, week 15, I hate how late we are in the season. Just remind everyone, be sure to follow all of Fantasy Six Pack social media accounts. Be sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel. And if you want to become an all-access member, get their award-winning rankings, which the guys are so good at. I don't know how they do it. I don't have the patience or the skill to be able to rank out players week by week, but we got it in Best Ball, Dynasty, IDP, you name it. These guys are killing it. If you want access to all of our contributors, you can sign up for the code F6P NFL, get an extra 10% off. But let's get right into it. Well, actually, before we get into it, what's up, Joe Bond? The boss is in the house. Always makes you feel good, Joe, to know the boss cares about you. The QBs this week, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can make a real solid case that one game should be basically all of the QBs you need. I didn't really separate them out by median and lower tier. Both of my guys are from the same game. Let's start with Sam Howell and that Washington versus Rams matchup. Sam is 6,200, 20-plus points in 6 straight on DK. Rushed for 20-plus yards in 3 of his last 5, which I was not aware he's been running that much. Rushed for 10-plus yards in 7 straight. 4 touchdowns on the ground his last 3. Really phenomenal stuff when you see it. He scored 20-plus the last 3 with 1 passing touchdown, 5 interceptions, and only 1 300-plus yard game. He's got a good chance to kind of get on the right track on the passing side of versus the Rams team that is 25th versus opposing QBs on DK. Obviously, remember that Lamar Jackson lit this defense up last week. And really, I know we've all been, having fun with Joe Flacco, and it is an amazing story. I'm not going to lie. Like, I've tinkered with him in a few lineups this week for DFS, but really all you need to know about this Rams defense is Joe Flacco, who I believe had not made a start in over a year. He's 75 years old, and he scored 17-plus points versus his defense in his first action of the year. So
pretty damning.
It's pretty bad. So I'm going to go with Sam Howell. No spoilers. We'll get to the other guy, Matthew Stafford, in just a second. But who are your median QB this week?
Well, so unsurprisingly, as I predicted last week, Debo Samuel will not end up on my wide receiver list this week.
Yeah,
because he has finally gotten up to now he's 7,700. He's jumped Ayuk. He's jumped a lot of people.
Rightfully so.
Lo and behold, Brock Purdy is still under 7,000. So he will still be my play because, guy's throwing 300 yards, 3 of his last 4 yards away from 4 of his last 5. Again, the only thing that scares you about Brock Purdy really is the volume. He's thrown under 30 passes in 4 of the last 5, which again,
unbelievable.
In that time span, 4 games where he scored at least 23 points. The only stinker was the Seattle game. And then he came back last week, played Seattle again, scores 25 for us. Guy's on a roll. Obviously, he's up there on the MVP odds, which sounds insane. But then you look at the efficiency metrics and you go, I don't know if
It's
he's
a good
actually top
case.
5 QB, but like
Oh, I think he
the
is.
numbers make him look like he is. His QB rating, which again, kind of an outdated stat, but 116.9. Not a lot of guys doing that. I mean, the simplest thing to look at is you just look at the fantasy points per game of the quarterbacks that are playing Sunday, which remember, we're missing. Well, we're not really missing quarterbacks tonight.
Saturday.
Justin
Saturday.
Herbert's out. We're not missing anyone. Yeah, I guess quarterback, we're not missing a lot Saturday either. But the only two guys who average more fantasy points on DK than him that are playing this Sunday are Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. And those guys cost 82 and 8,000. So 8,200 and 8,000. You're getting Brock Purdy for 68. He is playing the Cardinals, 23rd ranked defense on DK. DVOA, which again, as I'll remind people every week, accounts for the quality of your opposition, has them as the 31st ranked defense against the pass. This is not a defense that does well. It also is a defense that runs a lot of zone, which again doesn't matter as far as this podcast goes for Deebo Samuel.
But it's a good thing for Deebo.
It's a great thing for Deebo. Ayuk obviously just remains fantastic as well. I mean, like I said, the only thing that gives me any pause is, the last time these two played, it turned out to be the McCaffrey game. I think he scored 4 or 5 touchdowns in that game.
3 rushing and a receiving.
But again, what did Brock Purdy do in that game? 20 of 21 for 283 yards and a score. So he still ended up giving us over 20 points in that game. Because, he also ran in a touchdown himself despite McCaffrey scoring a bajillion touchdowns. So, again, we might not get a lot of volume, but there's still – look at this entire season. The evidence is there. We only need 21 passes sometimes, and Brock Purdy's going to throw for 250 yards and a couple of scores, especially against this defense. So, yeah, I'm going to play him till he's out of the $7,000 range, which, again, I am guessing will happen next week.
I love it. And again, the Cardinals with Kyler Murray, probably a little bit more frisky, meaning the Niners might have to stick around a little bit more.
Even if I hadn't seen your picks already, I would have known what game you were talking about. But if there was a backup game to that, it would be San Francisco versus Arizona.
And in both of those games, California, weather's going to be nice.
Right. Yeah, we're not too worried about that.
That's right. The value, which again, he's basically a median. I don't care. Matthew Stafford. What a time at 6,000 versus Washington. What a time for Stafford to really be coming into his own, especially for somebody trying to win the ESPN Northwest Florida League who had Stafford, Puka, and Kupp. And 3 weeks ago, I was going, crap, I'm not even going to make the playoffs. Now I'm feeling pretty darn good heading into them. But Stafford scored 20-plus points on DK in 3 straight. 10 touchdowns to just 1 interception in that span. All 3 of his highest scoring games came in the last 3 weeks. 2 of those versus what I would consider very good defenses in the Cleveland Browns and Baltimore Ravens. I do not consider the Washington Commanders a good defense. I joked on ESPN Northwest Florida that I started to say they're a dreadful pass I said, no, you know what? They're just a dreadful defense in general. They give up 30 points, it seems like, every single game. And, yeah, they can't stop anybody. The last 4 weeks, QBs to face him. Geno Smith, 369, 2 touchdowns. Tommy Goodfellas DeVito, 246, 3 touchdowns. Dak had that monster game, 331, 4 touchdowns. Tua, 280 and 2 touchdowns. On the season, QBs are averaging 278 yards and 2.3 touchdowns. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, the Stafford, either Kupp or Stafford Puka stack will probably be a majority of my cash game lineups. And there's going to be lineups that I end up playing, maybe both receivers, or I play Stafford Williams in one of the receivers, or maybe I play one of the 2 top receivers and Robinson. There's a lot of different ways, but I think that regardless how you look at it, there's going to be a bunch of points scored in this game. And if Stafford was going to have a monster game, which the Rams are still fighting for a playoff spot, this is the week. Love Stafford 6K.
Yeah, I always try to find a quarterback in the 5,000s to go with. And it's not like there's no options here. Obviously, Zach, right. It's like Zach Wilson just had an incredible game, probably the best game of his entire career. we don't, as good as that Jets defense is, are they going to be able to slow down Miami? Questionable, especially Miami should be very motivated to win this game after blowing it on Monday night. So maybe he's a good play. Tommy Cutlets. If he's, I don't expect him, again, a guy who's not going to have a ton of volume, but he's throwing a touchdown in every game. He's
running a lot,
ran for 70 yards. There's some real value in those, especially, if you're in a larger tournament. But if we're going cash, Stafford's the play. I mean, you laid it out pretty nice. Again, going to DVOA, I just mentioned Cardinals 31st. You can probably guess who's dead last against the pass when it comes to defense. That is the Washington Commanders. They have been atrocious. They're also a team that's giving up a lot of big plays with Washington, where I believe they are bottom 5 in big play rate dead last again. Yeah. Explosive pass plays allowed percentage per PFF, dead last. 5th was the Rams. They are 5th in producing those plays, and now they're facing the defense that's dead last in allowing them.
Yes.
So, again, there's huge value. Pick whichever receiver you like. I mean, shoot, maybe just pick both and just go all in on this and save money elsewhere. Yeah, I will be surprised if they don't hang 4 touchdowns on this Washington defense that is completely cratering. They're already bad. And again, they traded away their 2 best pass rushers. That's also the one thing you kind of worry about with the Rams is it's still not a great line. If you can get after Stafford, but there's no reason to think that will happen in this game. And yeah, Stafford's been on a roll. Defense is trash. Yeah, as much as I love the Purdy play, the Stafford play is my favorite of this. So, I think they're the fact that you save the $800. I think they're already like a coin flip basically as is. So yeah, that's my favorite play at quarterback this entire weekend.
Yeah, absolutely shocked when I opened up DK and saw his price because I thought it'd be close to 6,500.
I didn't understand it either. It does not make sense to me, but we'll take it.
All right, the running back position this week. I'll go ahead and tell you, I don't feel super comfortable about it. I mean, obviously in cash games, I'm going to do everything I can to get either CMC or Kyron Williams in a lineup because they're the 2 biggest volume guys. They have great matchups. Yeah. But obviously on this show, we can't do that. So I'm going to give you 2 that I think are going to be a little less owned, but I actually do like. The first, my median, James Cook, 6,300 versus Dallas. Yes, Dallas is one of the best defenses in the NFL versus the run. They're number 1 in the least points allowed on DraftKings to running backs. But Cook has been really hot lately. Double digits in 4 straight, averaging 19.75 points in that span. But it's his work as a receiver is why I like him at this price this week versus Dallas. His last 3 games in the passing game, 16 targets, 14 receptions, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's over 14 points per game, just as a receiver. And Dallas's offense, in case you hadn't noticed, has been on fire. Buffalo's defense, I know Kansas City didn't go wild on them, but we know Kansas City's offense isn't what it used to be. So I think they're going to have to score points, throw a lot. That's good for James Cook. And the fact is, 2 of the 3 games that Cook had those monster numbers recently with against good defenses versus running backs, and the Eagles and the Chiefs, and 6 different running backs this season have 3+ receptions versus these Dallas Cowboys. I think this is one of those deals where James Cook could have 5-6 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. That almost makes him worthwhile playing right there at 6,300. And he is an explosive enough player that he can take any carry at any time to the house. I believe in what he is. I like the way they've been using him, especially since they got rid of Dorsey. And I think he's a little bit of a value even in a tough matchup at 6,300 this week.
Yeah, I think that one makes a lot of sense. I'm again going to go with hey, if it's working for me, let's keep riding it.
I love it.
Bijan Robinson, 6,800 against our friends, the Carolina Panthers. We are now at 4 straight games of Bijan Robinson in double digits. We honestly didn't even see the carries I was hoping for in the Tampa Bay game. Only 10 carries for 34 yards, but got it in a touchdown, 5 receptions on 7 targets, added another 54 yards. I mean, again, the important thing is Arthur Smith finally seems to be getting it. Bijan is your probably best weapon. No disrespect to Drake London, who is good, to Kyle Pitts, who hopefully people remember is good. But yeah, Bijan, again, you're drafting a running back that high, the guy's got to be special. He is. As long as he's seeing 15 or more touches, I feel great. That especially applies to a game against this Carolina defense. Again, this is a game where I know it's outside, it's on the road. That obviously sets off some Ritter alarm bells that maybe he could blow this game. But assuming that Arthur Smith has that same thought process, and maybe we're seeing more Bijan in this game. But regardless, you figure this is a game that Atlanta is either winning or very much in the game the entire time. So hopefully we're going to see more carries on the ground against a defense that is trash against the run. 29th in points allowed to running backs on DK. Also 29th in total yards allowed on just rushing yards. And dead last in rushing touchdowns allowed. They have given up 17 touchdowns on the ground this season. 6 times opposing running backs have hit multiple scores on the ground. 5 straight games they've given up a rushing touchdown and at least 80 yards. Again, 4.5 yards per carry, 109 yards per game on the ground. This defense can't stop anyone on the ground, and increasingly they've struggled to stop people through the pass as well, which is just more opportunities to score. So yeah, Bijan Robinson, I'm hoping he will also follow the Debo path of being out of my price range next week after he gives us 20 plus this week.
I like it. And remember, the Falcons just ran it down the Panthers' throat in their week 1 win. I mean, literally, I don't think Ritter threw for 150 yards. So the value.
Let's get a repeat.
Let's do it. The value running back, I'm going to take the other side of this game. 5,600 Chuba Hubbard versus Atlanta. He scored 57.2 points on DraftKings the last 3 weeks, at least 11.6 in each of those, 20 plus in 2 of 3. The big thing, 62 rush attempts in that span, 48 the last 2. The other Panthers running backs saw 20 combined. So he outrushed Blackshear and what's the guy from Philly? Why am I blanking on him? That they brought over.
Swift?
Sanders. Miles, right?
Sanders.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Sanders. Yeah. Sorry.
You're good.
Yeah. I've tried to block him out because he's on one of my season-long teams, just wasting away because he's done nothing the entire year.
I have my old man moment, but he touched them just in the rushing game, 48-20. The other big thing, 10 red zone touches his last 3 games. And this Falcons run D is not quite what it was. They've allowed 130 yards or more on the ground in 5 of their last 6. And in the 5 of those 6 games, over 4 yards per carry for opposing running backs. We already know the Falcons run D will be without defensive tackle Contavious Street. The big thing is if they miss David Onyemata and Nate Landman, who both missed last week, this is a slam dunk play for me because we looked awful. The worst we had all year against Rachaad White and the Bucs, despite Baker not really being able to do anything. If those guys are out, I love Hubbard, but either way, with the volume in a game that Joe kind of alluded to, Ritter is not as good on the road, meaning I don't see us being able to kind of run away with this. And he got over 20 carries last week in a game they lost by 21. So I think they're just kind of throwing up the white flag in Carolina and being like, we're not going to sling it no matter what. That's good for Chuba Hubbard. He's my value play at 5,600.
Yeah, Chuba is definitely one of the guys I was looking at this week. I will go with another old favorite, although I don't think he's been a play in a couple weeks. It's Jerome Ford. He is questionable. So if he doesn't go, bump up $100, put in Chuba Hubbard. But 5,500 against the Chicago Bears. The downside to Jerome Ford is we haven't had the explosion games that we would have wanted. I mean, his best game is still week 2 against Pittsburgh, where he wasn't started. That is the game where the injury happened to Nick Chubb. He goes on, gives us 27 points, scores 19 the following week against Tennessee, who, again, elite run defense. And then since then, we've only broken 15 once. So that's the downside. The upside is he's riding 6 straight weeks in double figures. So it's not that he's giving us nothing. We're never getting the little snowflake that depresses us all when we look at our lineup. We're just not getting the fire symbol yet. Obviously, part of that is Kareem Hunt's been there. Kareem Hunt also questionable. So ideally for us, Jerome Ford plays, Kareem Hunt does not, and we're feeling awesome.
Smash play. Oh yeah.
But the important part, that's what's kept him so consistently giving us fantasy points, even with all the chaos of who the quarterback is, which, but hey, maybe this is just a better offense with Joe Flacco and we're more prone to an explosion game. We'll see. But it's the receptions. He has 4 straight games with multiple receptions. He has 3 different games this year where he's caught 5 passes, which, again, that's halfway to 10 points already, as is. And that is also the beauty of playing these Chicago Bears, because the Bears give up 6.1 receptions to running backs, according to CBS Sports. That is 30th in the NFL. They give up 57.5 yards to opposing running backs through the air. That is dead last in the NFL. So you've got a defense that struggles to cover running backs out of the backfield. You've got a guy who has shown his ability to do that. And, I mean, that's, again, part of the beauty of this is, let's say they crush the Bears because this defense is awesome. They have the lead the whole time. All right, we're going to get carries. And, fingers crossed, DJ Moore's questionable right now, and Lord knows I could use him in the fantasy playoffs. If he and Fields keep it going where they're like this magical connection that transcends space and time, fine. Well, hopefully we rack up 6 receptions this week. So either way, we've got a guy with, the highest ceiling of anyone, the highest floor of anyone in that 5,500 or below range. And, just fingers crossed that we're due for another a high ceiling game, especially if the offense is more competent, because God knows that offense has been all over the place this year.
It's not been good. Do you have any more running backs in your flex, or are they all receivers?
I do have a running back in one of my
Is he a Washington Commander?
He's not a Washington Commander.
I do want to mention Antonio Gibson before we get out of here. It's looking like Brian Robinson will not play this week. I mentioned I expect the Commanders to be down. What does that mean? They will be throwing. Yeah. I think he is a very sneaky play at a very reasonable price, to say the least. Got a real quick question here from Jackson, Washington. Jackson, sorry it's taking me a minute to see this. Would you start Zamir White tonight? Jackson, I'll tell you, my answer always starts with, who are we starting him over? Are we talking about just DK? If you're talking about just for like a showdown lineup, for instance, I already have him in a showdown lineup that I have going tonight. I was going to get really frisky and put him as the captain. I did not, but the Chargers are bad versus the run, and as a Georgia fan, watched a lot of Zamir White. He's a really good player. I'm kind of actually going through the same thing right now, because I think I'm going to start him in my ESPN Northwest Florida playoff league. It's 2 weeks. My other options are Javonte Williams, who's got a tough matchup, and Aaron Jones, who knows if he's going to play. And I think I'm just going to take, a team that I know they're going to run it a good bit. He's going to be the first guy. And since I have 2 weeks, I feel like I have more of an opportunity to take that kind of rest. Plus, I have Stafford with Puka and Cup this week, which makes me feel pretty good. So I think you absolutely can start him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, no Josh Jacobs. Like you said, the Chargers, perennial bad run defense. Assuming we're not talking about season long and you're, putting him over someone who is a more established starter in a reasonable matchup. Yeah, like you said, showdown lineups, anything like that, 100%, I would feel perfectly fine putting Zamir White in. I mean, a guy who got some hype or, immediately in camp his rookie season, and then it turned out to those of us who were like, he's a great stash at the end, and then Josh Jacobs had an all-pro season. But
here we go.
Zamir White,
he's got our running back. So it's Ford, Keaton, CEH, and Elliott. I would not start him over Ford.
No.
I think I would over the other guys.
Again, the question with Ford, though, like I said, questionable. So obviously, there's the chance he doesn't play.
I think then I would definitely do that. And then that way you're not playing 2 of those other 3.
CEH, it's a good matchup, But man, talk
Who
about someone I
knows?
don't trust at
Yeah.
all. Where
And Elliott,
McKinnon might just
Stevenson
score
could play.
3 2-yard touchdowns. So
Yeah, and Stevens could end up playing.
yeah,
Jackson, I kind of like the upside of it. I think the Raiders are going to win tonight. That
I like
means the
it
team's
too.
going to be up. That's a pro run, deal. He scores a touchdown, you're golden. The wide receivers this week, Joe, man, there's a bunch of good ones. There really is. I feel
There
like
are indeed.
not only in our price tag, but below. But I'm gonna start with Rashee Rice, 6,100 at New England. Joe, let's talk a little bit about Rashee Rice and compare him to Travis Kelce the last 3 weeks. Targets, Rice 29, Kelce 22. Receptions, Rice 23, Kelce 16. My favorite, target percentage per route run. Travis Kelce, 20%. You know what Rice's number is right now.
No, but I'm assuming it's quite good.
32.2%. 32% of the time he is being targeted when he runs a route. Hello. If you took Rice's averages over the last 3 weeks for a full season, 130 receptions, almost 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's hit 3 times his number, 2 of the last 3. Scored a touchdown, 2 of the last 3. His price has only risen $600 despite all that in the last 3 games. In New England, we've talked about this. Still a good defense. They're great against the run. Or they don't let people score touchdowns, I should say. But they have had their issues with the pass. They've lost so many corners. And 6,100 for a guy seeing 10-plus targets, getting targeted 32% of the time. Volume is king. Hello, Dave Eddy. I love Rashee Rice this week. He's my median wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm going to co-sign this one. Honestly, the biggest problem for Rice all year has just been being on the field enough. And he's typically, under that 70% mark, which is kind of that mark we always want to see, especially once we're paying real money for these guys. Over 85% of the offensive snaps last week. PFF has this as their 6th best matchup, wide receiver versus corners. Because again, that Patriots defensive backfield, not what it has been in past years, not what it was those first couple of weeks when Christian Gonzalez looked like the steal of the draft. So, yeah, I think and then the other thing too is I think because of what we've seen with this Kansas City offense, the struggles that they've had, this doesn't hit me as a game where you get the lead and you go, we're not afraid of this Patriots offense because I'm sure they're not. And we shut it down. I think you're just trying to consistently. Obviously, you get up, 25 points in the fourth quarter, you'll get there eventually. But I think this is a game where you're just trying to be right, to get everything going on this offense to carry it over to the following week. So that would be my only real concern for Rashee Rice in this matchup is the fact that they are such big favorites. But to my mind,
she said him score points, right?
I'm not concerned about it this week because I think you're just so focused on we need to be able to score points. If we can't do it, Patriots aren't a terrible defense, but this is kind of a game to experiment and to try some stuff to get that offense consistently going. So, there another player I did like that I'll just throw out there is DeAndre Hopkins. I do think Stingley is playing at a high enough level that's why, to me, I'd rather just go down to Rice. But Houston, another very heavy zone defense. They are 9th in zone rate this year. Hopkins, 15th in fantasy points per route run against zone. 26% target rate. On the season, 716 yards on 299 routes run. So very consistent production there. And obviously coming off of some of his strongest work, back-to-back 12 target games, 47.3 points the last 2 weeks. But I just think, this is, I think if Stroud and Nico Collins are goes, then I think Hopkins goes up in my opinion. Because then I'm thinking this could potentially
doesn't look good for Stroud though, right?
No, I would be surprised if Stroud plays, which is such a bummer because Stroud would be an awesome play against this defense that is so bad against the pass. And then Nico Collins would be a great play. But Nico's questionable, Stroud's questionable, and as you've alluded to before, I think the only QB we've seen clear concussion protocol in 1 week was Brock Purdy, and he looked terrible. Yep. So all the more reason, honestly, not to play him because Stroud's too important to risk, like, so that you can lose to Baltimore in the first round or something. So, but if on the off chance that happens, I would boost Hopkins up in my rankings. But as is, I like him. I think he's a potential play in your lineups, but I like Rice more. I would put him in my lineups before I put Hopkins. I just wanted to give another option there since we had the same guy.
You know I like options. Before we get into the value, Jackson has to follow up. Marquise Brown stable over the 4 running backs I ranked. If it's half PPR, absolutely. The 49ers run man at a pretty high rate. Brown is much better versus man defenses. Their first matchup with not as good of a quarterback, Josh Dobbs, he had 7 receptions, I think, on like 9 targets. So I would say yes. You got anything to disagree with that or want to keep rolling?
No, keep rolling. You're 100% agreed.
All right, we could not have Deebo Samuel this week. You talked about it, but we can have mini Deebo Samuel or discount Deebo Samuel. My boy Jaden Reed, 4,900 for the Green Bay Packers. Since week 9, 28 receptions, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. But oh, wait, there's more. 10 rush attempts, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, he is seeing a lot of volume. He would be actually the 14.4 points per game since week 9. That would be wide receiver 15 overall in that span. 11 points or more on DK in 6 of 8, 15 points or more in 4 of 5, touchdown in 4 of 5. And what I love the most about this is he lines up in the slot more than any of the other Packers wide receivers. Tampa, one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL for fantasy points to receivers in the slot. I think that he's going to have yet another big game. The fact that Aaron Jones is still banged up, now A.J. Dillon's banged up, I think it's only more likely he sees more rush attempts because, as you've seen, most of his carries have came in the last few weeks. I love Jaden Reed, and I'm honestly shocked he's still all the way down at 4,900.
I absolutely love that play as well. Honestly, when I looked at your wide receivers this week, I was like, all right, I got to find some alternatives because otherwise I'm just going to be saying what Keith said. It was great. So I will go. I'll co-sign it. Love it. I'll go down. So hopefully this is more helpful than saying, hey, DeAndre Hopkins is more expensive, but maybe almost as good. Wan'Dale Robinson, 3,700 against New Orleans. If you happen to catch that Giants game, you weren't watching Miami fumble it away against Tennessee. Wan'Dale was the main driver of the offense through the passing game. 6 receptions on 7 targets, 79 yards.
Had a big run, too.
Yeah, 2 carries for 36 yards. He has 8 carries on the season for 63 yards. So that is a potential little bonus that he can do.
The guy we thought we got from Kentucky, right?
Yeah. Again, he was a guy, went to Kentucky, transferred there. I believe it was a former Rams assistant, was the offensive coordinator that season, basically had him in the Cooper Kupp role, led the SEC in receiving yards. Again, think of all the great Bama guys that got drafted the last 2 years.
Yeah, he's a talented dude.
And
you could have said Georgia guys, dick.
That's true. Georgia guys as well. So he may only be 5'8", 185, but this guy can play. I think one of the big reasons we haven't seen him be more consistent is just he's coming off of an ACL tear. His first and still only 100-yard receiving game, tore his ACL last year. So we're hoping that 100-yard game is coming here. Over 75% of the offensive snaps the last 2 weeks. Seems like he's got some connection with DeVito. Again, when Dayball said, just go out there and let it fucking rip to DeVito on that last drive, the guy he found for the big game, Wan'Dale Robinson. Also, great thing about this, I don't think people are going to want to put him in their lineups because New Orleans is 3rd against wide receivers. It's super scary, but they're 2nd in fewest fantasy points allowed to the outside, to the boundaries. They are more middle of the pack against the slot, which is primarily where Wan'Dale is going to be lining up. Again, he's 5'8", 185. We're not throwing him out on the outside a lot.
The brain, I love it.
And then you go down to the PFF wide receiver corner matchups. So he has a 65.7 rating this week, which is bottom of that good, with the, it's color coordinated. So like green is the best, blue is good. He's in that blue, 65.7, solid rating. You feel pretty good about that one. Here's where the other giants are. Darius Slayton's rating, again, playing on the outside against those outside corners, 25.9. That is in the bottom of the below average range. And then Jalen Hyatt, a 12.3.
Thanks.
So again, one guy, they're scoring in the 60s. The other guys are in the mid-20s and not even the teens.
So you're saying Robinson and Barkley are about to get peppered with targets is what you're saying.
So, yeah, I would say Wan'Dale would not be surprised if we see another 7-target game, 6 receptions. So, yeah, I think he's worth that flyer.
I love it. I literally put 3 stars, Joe. I'm about to go through and start tinkering.
Again, go read, especially when those cash games, like I'd rather spend the money, get that guy. Like you said, he's been one of the more productive guys in general. But especially if you're trying to throw something into a larger group, into a tournament format, I think Wan'Dale Robinson's a play.
No, I actually like him in cash games because it frees me up to play Reed, Rice, and all these other guys. That's what I'm saying. He's going to be in some lineups for sure. Tight end position, all of a sudden pretty loaded week to week. It's kind of crazy. I'm going to take the easy layup for my median. It's David Njoku, 4,700. I think I'm honestly dumbfounded at this point that he has not gone up any more than he has. He's $700 more than what he was in week 10. That was 5 weeks ago. Double-digit points in DK in 7 of 8. 6+ targets in 8 straight. 8+ targets, 6 of 8. 4+ receptions, 7 of 8. 6+ receptions, 4 of his last 5. And he did this despite playing with 4 different QBs. Chicago's 22nd versus tight ends, and you could argue Flacco is his best QB he's had. And what I really like is Flacco's been there. 2 of his highest air yardage totals, 2 of the top 4 have came in the first 2 games with Flacco. So they're actually starting to push the ball down the field. Njoku is a nightmare down the field in one-to-one matchups because he's so big and physical and fast. And he's already matched his touchdowns for the season in just 2 games with Joe Flacco. I love Njoku. He's still a very reasonable price at 4,700. He's going to be in a bunch of my cash game lineups.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, no argument against this. Again, we had the one blip game against the Rams where he only got 3.7, which I'm pretty sure he was probably one of my plays that week because he was one of those guys where it's like, why not just keep playing him?
Yep.
And I kind of think that's why he still isn't in the 5,000s. I mean, and also last week against Jacksonville was kind of finally the huge explosion game that we've been waiting for. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. Let's find out I don't think 27 points is obviously the new normal, but let's find out if Joe Flacco throwing to him is, like you said, the air yards, if that's going to open things up even more. What we want, the under 5,000, especially tight ends, where
13.4 points is all we're asking for at his price, like to hit that 3 times number. That's it.
Right. And again, you look at the points per game of everyone and you go 10.9. So again, he's outscoring Jake Ferguson, who costs more, Dalton Schultz, who costs more. And again, those guys are facing top 10 defenses against tight ends. Obviously, Trey McBride, since he's taken over that starting role, has been awesome, and we love him.
Treat him like a wide receiver, too.
San Francisco, though, if you know anything about the quality of their linebackers, it's not a surprise. One of the best defenses against tight ends. And then we've got Njoku, who's going up against, a bottom 10, 12 defense against tight ends, and he's still at 4,700. So another guy to look out for if Darren Waller does play this week against the Saints, who are 28th against tight ends. There's potential there, but there's obviously a lot of risk there. Njoku, it's as low of risk as we can get at the under 5,000.
All right. The value we talked about, hopefully this does not happen for Logan Thomas as well, because he's playing those Rams who are really bad, but he's 3,700. And I think why I love him so much this week is I think that people are going to shade away from him because he's had 2 awful games. Like literally 2 of his 3 lowest scoring games, lowest targeted games have came in the last 3 weeks. I think that could lead to lower ownership. But the Rams can't cover tight ends. They're 29th on DK. And again, that's despite Njoku doing basically nothing. If I remember correctly, didn't Bryant have a big game that game? So they still gave up stuff to tight ends, just not to Njoku. But in just their last 2 games, again, Thomas, a big, fast, physical tight end. Against big, fast, physical tight ends, McBride, 7 for 60. And then obviously, again, Harrison Bryant caught the touchdown. I think this is a great game for Thomas. I think they're going to be down. I'm going back and forth on whether I want Samuel or Thomas in my lineups, but I think with just the way they've been against tight ends all season, it's a very good chance that Logan Thomas has kind of that breakout game that we've been waiting for him. He's been very good at hitting his 3 times number. That's why I feel comfortable playing him, even if he hasn't done it the last 2 weeks. But he's the kind of guy that we've seen in the past can have those 7 for 90 and a touchdown games. And it's a great opportunity in what I think is going to be a shootout at the Rams.
Yeah, I thought a lot about putting him as my bargain play as well because he's just always there in that bargain range. And because, again, the amount of dropbacks that there are in that offense, it just opens you up for so much. I love that one. I'm going to go down, though, to the 2,900 range.
Okonkwo!
You got it.
Yes, that's who I almost picked. I love it.
Chig Okonkwo. I mean, listen, at this price range, 3 straight games giving us 8 to 10 points. I'd take it. I'd be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, the beauty of it is he's playing the Texans now. Listen, Carolina, Indy, Miami. Not, those are some reasonable matchups, especially that Miami one. But man, it's hard to get better than the Texans. I really don't think that it does.
K-Dotton scored 24 points versus them. He hasn't topped 11 points all season other than that game.
27th against tight ends on DK. I think it undersells how bad they are.
It does.
Because dead last in targets. And again, remember, everyone's played the same number of games now. We're through the buys. There's no they played an extra game. No. Dead last. Receptions, tied for last. Yards, 30th. The only reason that they're not dead last is they've only given up 4 touchdowns, which is middle of the pack. That's the only thing that's holding this defense back.
But at this price range, I would rather have the chance of targets and receptions than something fluky like touchdowns, right?
Yeah. And again, last 3 games, 17 targets, and that's been consistent. 5, 6, 6. It's not like 9 one game and 2 the next. 3 straight games with at least 5 targets. Actually, at least 4 targets in 8 of 9, which, again, that's not a huge number. But for a guy who costs under $3,000, we're 90% chance he's seeing at least 4 targets. And again, against a team that's given up, was it 119 targets to tight ends this season in 13 games? I would be shocked if it's only 4 or 5 targets. So again, and all the more so, if there whatever happens, hey, if CJ Stroud happens to play, all the more reason to love Okonkwo. I would keep in mind though that listen, Davis Mills was not a good quarterback. There's a reason it took CJ Stroud.
He can sling it though.
But he's a guy who's played. This is not some dude who you're just throwing off the bench who's never played before. He was their starter last season. So not a guy who's incompetent. And again, Titans pass defense is horrific. So there's still reason.
Nico Collins is out, don't you think? Or actually, if Collins plays, I'd highly consider him no matter who the QB is.
Yes.
I would look at Noah Brown, too, who has been a guy that's a big play machine, lines up a good bit on the outside.
That's a good call.
Titans, again, Mills is going to take his shots. If you remember, he had a lot of games. It was like 20 of 40, but he'd throw for 290 and 3 touchdowns. He'd have 2-3 picks too, but we don't care about that. We're just taking the receiver.
We do not.
I love the Okonkwo play. A guy that really, in my opinion, has kind of disappointed this year. But if you look at it, the QB situation has not been great for him. So that's not all him.
Definitely not.
The flexes. Volume is king. Dave Eddy, he's beat that into my head, and I'm glad he has. Garrett Wilson. 5,800 at Miami. Good God. Like, I didn't even realize till I went back and looked at this. 17 points or more in DK 5-8. I knew he'd been scoring okay, but since the bye, 7 games, 11.9 targets per. 11.9, that's a 7-game sample size. Almost 6.5 receptions. Over 70 yards. 14.76 points per game on DK. And he scored 17 points versus the same Miami defense with Tim Boyle at QB. Say what you want about Zach Wilson. He is an upgrade on Tim Boyle. And this offense looked pretty frisky last week. Maybe it was just a 1-week deal. Who knows? But I know this. Garrett Wilson's going to get peppered with targets. And I've kind of been using him a good bit lately. As long as he's under 6K, why not? Because he's averaging, again, almost 15 points per game his last 7. And he does still have the ability to have those 20, 30-point games.
Yeah, I think anytime you're a top receiver and you're playing Miami, I like that player. And the fact that we saw some real life out of this Jets offense last week, all the more so. I had to do this because he was under 7,000. Derrick Henry, 6,900 against the Houston Texans. Because if you're a Titans fan or a Texans fan,
I know this just from doing this DFS show.
You already know this. Derrick Henry seems to just
he owns them. He owns them.
I think it's like some sort of like, I know we used to be the Oilers, but
we're gonna find out he has a stake of ownership in the Texans when he retires. He just couldn't come public with it.
So the last 5 games that he has played.
Fucking nuts.
The Houston Texans. He has run for 211, 212, 250, 219, and a disappointing 126 yards the last 5 games. So again, 4 200-yard games and a 126. Also, that 126, the first of those games, probably not surprising because he ran for 200 yards in the others, where he didn't score multiple touchdowns, still scored a touchdown in that game. So if you're keeping track, that is... I didn't add up all 5, but it's basically 1,000 yards in 5 games, along with 10 touchdowns. So he basically got a good running back's worth of production in 5 games. Last 5 he's played. Now he did miss 2 games in between there, so it's over a few years. First game dates back to 2019. That 2019 game, he won me a fantasy championship. So, always hats off to Derrick Henry. That's why I've always checked it every year. I'm like, all right, I'm not forgetting, right? He destroys them. And yes, he destroys them constantly. So basically, until they hold him to under 100 yards,
and he's under 7K,
keep him out of the end zone, or he's over 7,000 in one of these matchups, I will always have Derrick Henry in my lineup when he plays the Houston Texans. Because until they stop him, I know that their run defense has been better than their pass defense this year. I don't care. I'm putting Derrick Henry in some of my lineups. Maybe all of them. I might just go all in.
I love it. There's some really interesting running backs, 6,300 to 6,900. Tony Pollard, 6,800 against the Buffalo defense. It's not been great. He's quietly all of a sudden now scoring 15 or more points every week again. I keep waiting for that Pollard game. We had so many of them last year. And I mean, he wasn't even the full back, and he would have like 80 yards receiving, 100 yards rushing. But I really like that Henry call, and it's so funny until you brought it up. I completely forgot about it. He owns him. I do know that.
Right. All right. Never forget
the value, and you have to make sure he's playing. And full discretion, after hearing Joe talk about Wan'Dale Robinson, he's only 3,700, right? Is what you said Robinson was?
Yes, 37.
Yeah, so he's $400 more. But I would consider Michael Wilson, 3,300. Versus San Francisco. It looks like he's going to be back. Make sure he's good to go. But when he's played, 3+ receptions and 6 of 8. And this is really just about his biggest game of the year was versus this opponent, San Francisco, where he had 7 targets, caught 7 passes, 76 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's had some rush attempts and other things. They kind of, have used him also as like a mini Deebo Samuel here and there. And remember, he really hasn't got any games. I think he's played 1 game so far with Kyler Murray. So upgrade at QB. We've seen what's happened with Dobbs. It was a great story, but it's over. And I think that there's some real value in Wilson. One of our guys in the chat was asking about Marquise Brown. I do like Marquise Brown a lot this week too, because we think San Francisco's going to score. Arizona's going to be down. You can't run on San Francisco. So it just makes sense. But I just think Michael Wilson at 3,300, what he's already done to him this year and his ability. I think he's got 3 games of 15 points or more. The rookie's got a lot of ability to have that upside that we want, and he only needs 9.9 points to hit that 3 times number that we obsess over in cash games. So he's my value flex.
Yeah, we're always happy when Michael Wilson plays because he's often a very reasonable guy to throw in there. So hopefully he does. I'm going to throw in another questionable guy that I'm hoping will be back this week because we've missed him in the last couple of weeks. It's Demario Douglas, 3,900 against Kansas City. He got a concussion in the Giants game back in week 12. He's missed the 2 games since. He's still questionable. He's had limited practice so far this week. So
at least he's practicing. Yeah, he wasn't doing that all last week.
Yeah, so before it was like, hey, if there's a miracle, don't forget about it.
What is he, 4K?
3,900, yeah. So just under that 4,000 mark. Again, guy, the last 5 games that he played saw 38 total targets, at least 6 in every one of those games. And he was ramping up
to a monster
6,
game
7,
until he
7,
got that
9,
concussion,
9.
man.
Yeah, against Indy, he had 14, 6 receptions, 9 targets, 84 yards. Yeah, got hurt, I believe, in the third quarter, pretty early on in the Giants game. So there's still about half that game left. He'd seen 9 targets for 49 yards, which I remember saying he was an all-in play for me that week.
Yep,
and again, guy got hurt, missed almost half the game, still gave us 10.9 points. By far the best receiver on this Patriots team since Kendrick Bourne went down. The Kansas City runs man 33% of the time. That's the 5th highest rate in the NFL. So far, Patriots wide receivers, Douglas, 2 yards per route run, very solid number. Next best guy is Juju. He has 86 routes for 128 yards. So that's just barely under 1.5. So he's a half yard better than anyone else against man defense. His target rate this year against man is 31.3%. That is an elite number. So basically, if he plays, he is by far the best receiver on this team. It doubles up because of the matchup, the man defense. And again, you assume Kansas City will score points. You never know. They've been a little iffy this year, but it's still Andy Reid. It's still Pat Mahomes. I don't think you can just – again, Zeke's actually a pretty reasonable play this week. But I don't think you can just pound the ball with Zeke and hope to win this game. So if Demario Douglas is a go for the Patriots, he's going to be a go for my lineups.
Love it, Joseph. You know I love it. All right, defenses. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you know our philosophy is get down under 3K, right? Find out who you like.
That is the goal, always.
For me, I got to start with your boys, the Giants, 2,700. This defense has been frisky, man. Like it really has. I don't trust Carr at all. He's been getting booed relentlessly in his last 2 home starts. I don't hate the Jets, particularly if Tyreek Hill is out. But the team I keep coming back to, again, the Giants are my favorite D, would be New England, 2,300 at Kansas City, or excuse me, at home versus Kansas City. I mean, they've scored 5 or more points in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games. And they've played some good offenses with absolutely no help from their own offense. So I'm kind of teetering right now back and forth between the Giants and the Pats. And I hate to say this, if you want to talk me into another flyer in an under 3K range, the Panthers, 2,800 versus my Falcons, our numbers on the road are awful. We average 150 passing yards on 30 attempts. It's terrible. And we turn it over so much. But it looks like right now I'm going with the Giants, and if not the Pats. What's your defenses?
One defense that is a little bit pricier that I kind of like is the Bears, who came through big for us.
3,300, right?
Yeah, 3,300, really trending in the right direction. Multiple sacks, 4 straight games, 9 interceptions the last 3 weeks.
Hello.
And granted, hey, one of those games is against Minnesota. It's Josh Dobbs, who, the magic has seemed to have run out. He's turned into a pumpkin. But 2 of those games are against Detroit. And again, Jared Goff generally has played very well the last 2 years, but 5 picks for him against those Bears. So again, it's Joe Flacco, who knows what's going to happen there. So I think that's
turned into a pumpkin literally right before our eyes.
Kind of same reasoning. I think the Rams aren't a bad play. That's another team that's been getting a couple sacks very consistently since week 6. They've had multiple sacks in every single game. But yeah, we do want to target that under 3,000 range. So yeah, looking at that, I don't like the Bucks. I think Jordan Love bounces back. The Jordan Love discourse is so weird to me. I've heard multiple people, podcasts, radio people, who've been like, "Oh, we got all excited about Jordan Love because of 3 good weeks," and I'm like, "You're down on him because of 1 bad week? Like, what are we doing?"
That was so predictable. It was a Monday night game versus a bad team who had been frisky at home all year long. If you listen to me and Chris talk about the Monday night games on Monday, I predicted the Giants would win a close game because that's a tough place to play. In New York, that crowd's nuts. It's like the Giants D is pretty good. Like, God, people overreact just so much these days. It's crazy. Let's take a break.
Wild. Yeah, so I really looking through. I think you've nailed the right plays because like Cardinals, San Francisco. You heard me talk about Purdy. 0% chance. Like unless I just love everything perfect about the rest of my lineup, I will find money elsewhere to not have the Cardinals. Again, Bills. That defense is injured. Dallas is looking like a buzzsaw. That's like a just bet the over game. Like try to get. I don't think we talked about anyone from that game, probably because most of the
they're all expensive. Or it's Gabe Davis,
like,
who you couldn't pay me to play. Even in
I saw him listed somewhere in an article I read, and I was like, I just can't do it.
No,
but yeah, throw someone in that game into your lineups because that game.
Well, we talked about James Cook. I gave James Cook.
That's true. You did get James Cook. So yeah, James Cook is the value play there. Get him in because there's going to be a ton of points. And then the Commanders. We both love Stafford. Don't do it. So yeah, it's the Giants who listen. It's a little fool's goldy because so much of the wins and the defensive performance has been driven by turnovers, but that's all we're really trying to find on DK. So the fact that this team has put up 12 turnovers the last 3 weeks, 14 turnovers the last 4. I mean, like you said, it's not like we're afraid of Carr. It's not like we're like, oh, he never turns the ball over.
18 sacks our last 7 games, so they are starting to get more pressure.
Again, Thibodeau is racking up the sacks this year. I think he's 11.5 or 12 now. Dexter Lawrence missed a game in there. So at least one of those games, I know Dex was out, and that's the best defensive player on the team. The safeties are playing phenomenal right now. Jets, really good defense. Like you said, I would probably steer clear if Tyreek plays.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That's only if Tyreek does not play.
But, I mean, I would keep in mind, they gave up 34 points back in week 12, scored 13 points because they had 3 turnovers. Granted, they also got a touchdown, but.
That was at home, though, too. Miami is so good at home. Like, so to me, that was at the Jets. So
I think I'm with you. I think the Giants are probably my top play, but if you need to save money, Jets and Patriots, again, good defense. Well, really good defense, honestly, for the Jets. Patriots are still solid defense. Say whatever you want about Bill Belichick. That guy's still a defensive genius, week in, week out. And I'm so angry I didn't pick them last week against the spread so I could gain up on you. Because for all the
again, Mike nothing by the time we got done. This shit was hilarious.
Mike Tomlin's another guy where people.
RC, I'm sure, was having a good week.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's coach of the year. It's like, oh, no, now he sucks because they lost 2 games. It's like, he's a good coach. Everybody relax.
He is a good coach, but we have a buddy, RC, who he's not a good coach, Hill, for forever. And I'm sure he was taking some pretty big victory laps last week. I meant to actually search that in the group. All right, before we get out of here.
Real quick, I just want to throw this out because it's one of those things that bothers me about the way people talk about Belichick now. Because listen, shit on him as much as you want as a GM.
Especially as a GM, yeah.
And for whatever he was thinking last year with Patricia and Joe Judge running the offense, terrible idea. But keep in mind, Mike Tomlin, who most of us agree, very good coach. Bill Belichick has won a Super Bowl more recently than Mike Tomlin has won a playoff game. So the idea that just Bill Belichick can't coach anymore, it's insane to me. Listen, he's got his faults. Maybe they should move on because of the GM stuff. Yeah. But that guy's a genius. So if you want to save your money,
if the Patriots can't just let the guy go out on his own. terms of what he's done for that organization, like as a Falcons fan, go fuck yourself. Like for real. Like he's earned his golden ticket.
Fair.
Okay. I give anything for a quarter of what Bill Belichick has won. And I built a freaking statue by hand of the guy outside of the Mercedes-Benz Dome. So don't be so entitled, Patriots fan. Jesus. Talking to you, Bill Simmons.
Patriots fans aren't, but yeah. It's
all right, let's pick 3 games since we'll do the Thursday night,
that's right.
Sunday
I
night,
forgot
Monday
we're doing
night.
3. That's right.
All right, Chargers, Raiders minus 3.5. I'll go ahead and tell you, I am taking the Raiders. Who you got? I'll give the points.
I mean, 3.5 is like just enough where it's interesting to me. I think Herbert's been what's keeping this team afloat the last couple of years, and that people.
I thought you were going to say holding them back.
I actually think he's underrated by a lot of people because so many people are like, he hasn't won anything. He's not good. It's like this guy's one of the 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and it's crazy.
I'd like to see him win a little bit more, but that's fair.
I would too, but it's like honestly, listen, I'm not going to defend Staley. He should get fired. But the idea that this is like the most stacked roster is insane. It's paper thin once like 2 guys get hurt on either side of the ball, and that happens every single year. So I think Herbert is awesome. He's out. I will take the Raiders, even though the half point scares me a little.
Okay, because just a little devil's advocate here. Whose team you like better, Herbert's or CJ Stroud's?
I mean, I guess I would say Herbert's.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I need to ask. No more questions, Your Honor.
I think Bobby Slowick, again, another Shanahan guy, killing it as the OC.
I just like to mess with the Herbert people. I think Herbert's great. I need him to get rid of Staley, so that way, then if he doesn't win, I can blame Herbert.
I just think when you go back to that Raiders game in week 17, because I think we were still in the 16-game seasons that year. He converted like 4 4th downs in one drive.
He was unbelievable. No, he was. That was the biggest closest thing he's got to a playoff game. All right, Ravens, Jaguars. Jaguars given 3.5. I'll let you pick first this time. Who you got?
Check. This is another one where
I can't believe I had to double check. The Jaguars are favored.
No, they're dogs. They're 3-point dogs.
Oh, I did write that down wrong. I was about to be like, "There's no way." Okay, that makes more sense.
I mean, if Trevor Lawrence is fully healthy, I'm considering this because there's like 5 home dogs, and I could look through the schedule, and I was like, I don't really like any of them. I'm like, well, that's stupid because at least 1 or 2 of these teams is for sure winning. But you've got hobbled Trevor Lawrence against maybe the best defensive coordinator right now, or at least top 5, and a top 5 defense, and Lamar Jackson's on the other side, and yeah, I'll roll with the 3 points. I'll lay the 3. Give me the Ravens.
All right, so I think this will be your only opportunity this week to tie it up. I'll take the Jags. I hope I'm wrong. I'm a big Lamar fan. I like the Ravens, but they find a way of just screwing the pooch as much as any team that I can think of the last few years. And they supposedly have – actually, I shouldn't say supposedly. They do have a great coach. But, man, you look at their losses this year, it's unbelievable. And they do this stuff all the time. It would just be the most Ravens thing ever to come into this situation.
Giants last year.
That's what I'm saying.
I know.
I
know that we made the playoffs last year, but that should not have happened.
If that was 3 points, I would be with you. 3.5. I take the Jags. All right, then we got the Eagles, Seahawks. The Eagles are giving 3 points. I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm taking the Eagles. If they don't get right this week, they got serious issues. I think they make a statement. I really do. I think the Eagles are in a great chance to still not only win the division, but win the NFC. I did not realize, did you, that they own the tiebreaker if both them and the Cowboys went out?
I did know that. So, yeah, that's obviously the big – they have 2 games against the Giants. They should feel really good if they win this game that they're going to get the 1 seed because as fun as the Giants are right now, I've seen the Eagles play us the last year twice, and it looked like the Cowboys games this year.
That means what's his name? Scott touchdowns coming up. We'll have him as a DFS play here in a week.
This could move the spread, so I want to run this by you. Can I have Seattle if Geno plays and Philly if Drew Lock plays?
I'll give you that.
Okay, and I'll even take like some movement.
You ain't gotta get movement. I'll give it to you. I actually think that the supposedly Geno is going to play. He's
Yeah, I
saying
saw
he's
it. I
feeling
just looked it
good.
up.
So
Yeah, so fingers
that's
crossed.
a current
knock
line.
on
So,
wood.
but if no Gino, I will. Yeah, even though I thought
That's one of those games.
What's his name?
That's
Looked
one of those
okay
games
last
where
week. Locke, I will say though.
Locke wasn't bad, but I just have no trust in him. Where this is one of those games that I wish was on the main Sunday slate, especially if Gino plays. I'm kind of bummed that we don't have anything going on with this game because I think it's ripe for some points if Gino plays, especially. But yeah, so all right, so hopefully Gino
and then don't
plays,
forget Saturday.
We have 2 games on the line here.
We got the Vikings, Bengals, Steelers, Colts, Broncos, Lions. I'm thinking about if I don't trying to get Fantasy Six Pack to give me the okay, I may end up doing instead of a stacks article, a Saturday DFS plays article. If not, I will send out a tweet Friday with my favorite DFS plays. But I love these 3-game slates. There's like just enough to be different. Again, do single entry, double ups. Do not get into these multi. It's just so hard. Prime example last week, I did a $12 entry. I won $3,000. There was 4,900 people in it. You can win plenty of money and you have a much better chance, than trying to beat these minefields, which that's all you're doing. So, but you got anything you want to plug or anything before we get out here, Joe?
I mean, hey, if you've got I don't want to take anyone away from these football games, which honestly doesn't feel like the most exciting slate on Saturday. I think Broncos Lions is reasonably exciting, but all those are every
team has a winning record
in the playoff hunt.
Every team has a winning record. Every one of them.
So fascinating group. I don't want to take anyone away from that, but hey, if you have Peacock, number 1 Arizona playing number I think 3 or 4 Purdue, so get ready to see my Wildcats win again.
In one of the most meaningless games imaginable, a college basketball game in November, December. No offense, Joe, but I see it every year.
The 1 seed.
You say that if either of these teams end up 28-4, and this is like one of their losses, they'll end up getting the 1 seed because they played, a tough game out of conference. So I've seen how this works, but no, I'm with you. Go.
Well, you never know because hey, in football you can beat LSU with the Heisman Trophy winner by 3 touchdowns, and then they'll keep you out of the playoff. So I'll take this over that personally, but that's how it goes.
Amen. And I hope that's a Zamir White touchdown. I don't see, for whatever reason, it's not uploading. They're up 7-0, and I really want to know. So that way we ended up helping out our friend who was asking questions. We appreciate all of you for listening. Be sure to check out all of Fantasy Six Pack's amazing work. Follow me and Joe on Twitter, and we hope to stay on fire this week. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.